the description thing, okay, if you're watching this later on YouTube, what we're doing is chapter 23 of my book, Overcoming ACT Math, and we're doing quiz number 5. Make sure you check out the description for any extra problem sets or updates I put for this video over time. And then make sure that you do the problems on your own first before watching this to get the best results. So let's go to number 1, solve for x in the proportion below. So remember, fraction bar equals fraction bar. We have the trick that we can remember, which is just cross multiplication. Some people call this like butterfly multiplication, something like that. And my YouTube is the same as this, and there's a link in my profile. So what we're going to do is cross multiply. So we're going to do 360 times 5, which is going to be 1,800. And that's going to be equal to 25 times 15 plus x. So this is a number pressed up against parentheses, so we have to do distributive property. This is ACT tutoring for people asking. So distributive property means we're going to multiply this by each of the terms in parentheses. So it's going to be 375 plus 25x, and then it's going to be equal to 1,800. Now, we're trying to solve for what x is, so we have to get x by itself. We are going to do that by subtracting 375 from each side. And then when we do 1,800 minus 375, we're going to get 1,425. And then we're going to get that that's equal to 25x on the other side. So we're going to divide by 25 now to get x completely by itself, and we're going to get that x is equal to 57. So it would be F. So let's go to number 2. Helen left her home at 10 a.m. on Friday to go on a weekend trip to a beach resort. Could you have simplified the left fraction to -3 or to 3 over x? The left fraction to 3 over x. How are you getting that? No, you can't do that. I don't know how you're thinking about doing that. So then number 2 says, Helen left her home at 10 a.m. on Friday to go on a weekend trip to a beach resort. She traveled nonstop for 672 miles. She arrived at the beach resort at 2 a.m. on Saturday. Approximately what was her average speed in miles per hour while traveling? Assume there is no change in time zone. Okay, so no change in time zone, and she leaves at 10 a.m. So speed is going to be just distance divided by time. So the speed is equal to the distance, which we already have, 672 miles, over the amount of time that her trip takes. So she's leaving her home at 10 a.m. on Friday, and she's arriving the next day at 2 a.m. on Saturday. So what I would do in this case is, instead of like counting up the hours, I would say I like to use like the 24 or 12 hour rule. So like in this case, I would use the 24-hour rule, where it says like if 24 hours have passed, a whole day has passed, it's going to be 10 a.m. the next day. So let's assume 24 hours have passed, then we're at 10 a.m. the next day. But remember, we don't want that. We want to be at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. Sorry. We want to be at 2 a.m. So we have to think, okay, what's the difference between these? Well, that's 8. So I would subtract 8 hours and say that 16 hours have passed. Have passed. Yeah. So then we would divide by the time, because speed is just distance over time. So then you do 672 divided by 16, and that's going to give you 42J. Okay, so let's go to number 3. If Lacey did not go past the speed limit and drove 25 miles in 30 minutes at a constant speed, then which of the following is the lowest possible speed limit in miles per hour? That's important. The ACT, I would say more so than the SAT, likes to trick you with like unit stuff, where they'll like give you something in minutes and like want you to answer in hours. So let's do this in hours. So 30 minutes is just half an hour, or not, yeah, sorry, half an hour. I did say that right. 30 minutes is half an hour. So instead of saying 30 minutes, let's think in terms of half an hour. So if we want miles per hour, it's 25 miles per, and then the number of hours, because miles per hour is like this, written like this, the number of hours is half of an hour. So then if we do 25 divided by half, that's going to equal 50 miles per hour. You could also write it like this way, but I just wrote it the way that I'm used to. So 50 miles per hour is how fast she's going. But they're asking us which of the following is the lowest possible speed limit if like these are our possibilities. So the lowest possible speed limit here would have to be, if she's going 50 and she's not going past the speed limit, would have to be then 51. Because if it was 48, she's already going past it. So then let's go to number 4. Thank you guys for liking the live. In the figure shown below, AC is equal to 14. So let's label that. And AB, what was your personal essay about, if you don't mind me asking? Oh, that was so long ago. I'm pretty sure that it was, I think it was something about like mental health stuff, I think. I don't know. Maybe it was. I think it was about that. I can't really remember. It was a long time ago. I can't remember if that was something I was just brainstorming or if that's what it really was. But I wouldn't recommend that now. I actually tell students to like stay away from that stuff. I don't know why the person that I was working with like recommended that I do that or was even considering that. So then let's go to this one right here. So it says AC is 14 and AB is 35. So that means that like all of this side has to be 35. And DE is 8. What is the length of BE? So we're trying to find this guy right here. So what I remember for like ACT and SAT is whenever I see a triangle inside of a triangle like this, I just automatically think similar triangles. I mean, you can prove it to yourself if you want. But it pretty much never fails. A triangle within a triangle, similar triangles. So they're usually wanting you to do side ratio stuff. So side ratios, what I teach my students is I just do small to big matching sides equals small to big matching sides. So what I mean by that is like 8 is the smaller triangle side and it matches up to 14 on the big triangle. And then you could do the same thing with like corresponding sides for the other triangles. So then how is that 51? Someone said that they're confused on this because she's going 50 miles per hour, but she hasn't passed the speed limit. So that means that the speed limit has to be like a number that's at 50 or higher. So it's saying the lowest possible that it could be of these options would be 51. Okay, so then this small over big would be 8 to 14. Now remember, we're trying to find this side BE, so that would be the small side. To the big side would be BC. So we don't know what BC is, but we can figure it out using Pythagorean theorem, because we could do 35 squared plus 14 squared equals what BC squared is. So let's do that. We're going to do 35 squared plus 14 squared is equal to BC squared. And then when we do that, we would get 35 squared plus 14 squared is going to be 1,421. And that's going to be equal to BC squared. And then we're going to say, okay, I have to square root each side to get BC by itself. So I'm going to take the square root of 1,421 is equal to BC. Now, 1,421 is going to be the same thing as 49 times 29. So 49 is a perfect square. So we could say that this is 7, because 7 times 7 is 49. We take out a 7, and we leave the 29 on the inside. And that equals to this whole BC side. So now, instead of saying that it's over BC, we could say it's over 7 root 29. So all I did for this was I said I need to have a proportion that's small over big matching sides, because these are similar triangles. So like 8 is the small side that matches to 14, so small over big is equal to, they want me to find BE, so that's the small side that matches the big side, BC. I didn't know what BC was, so I had to use Pythagorean theorem to find it. So now I'm going to cross multiply to find out what BE is. So I'm going to do 8 times 7 root 29, and that's going to be 56 root 29. And that's going to be equal to 14 times whatever BE is. So now I have to divide each side by 14 to get BE by itself. So when I divide each side by 14, I'm going to get, that goes in 4 times, so it's going to be x is equal to 4 root 29. So that would be J. Let me get water real quick, guys. I gave up. Okay, well, you guys can watch this slower later if you'd like, on my YouTube when I upload it to help you out. So then, what is the equation of the perpendicular bisector of the line segment whose endpoints are 4, 6 and -6, 10? So it would be, now you don't have to draw this in like the XY plane exactly. Like, obviously it's not going to look like this. It's just, it doesn't matter how you draw it. So I'm just going to draw it the easy way like this. And this is just saying that like I have a line with endpoints at this and this. And we want the equation of the perpendicular bisector, so this is the perpendicular line bisector, the line that's perpendicular, and it's going to cut these in half. So this right here is the midpoint, because it cuts the line in half. So that, like the point where it's like in half, that's the midpoint. So if we want to find the equation of this line right here, what we can do is we can say, okay, these lines, this line and this line are perpendicular to each other. What do we know about perpendicular lines? That they have negative reciprocal slopes. So we can find the slope of this line right here and then just take the negative reciprocal and we have the slope of that line. So how do we find slope? Well, we label our points. I mean, you don't have to, but I do just so like people can see. So I'm going to say that this is x1, y1, this is x2, y2. You could flip it and you could say that this is x2, y2, and this is x1, y1. As long as the 1's are together and the 2's are together, that's what matters. So then the slope is always equal to y2 minus y1. So 6 minus 10 over 4 minus -6, because it's x2 minus x1. And then minus and minus is just plus. So that's going to be equal to 6 minus 10 on top is going to be -4. Over on the bottom, we're going to have positive 10. Now, if we divide by the greatest common factor of 2, we're going to get -2 on top, and we're going to get 5 on the bottom. So the slope of this line right here is -2/5. Now, remember, we're not interested in this slope. I mean, we are to get this slope, essentially. So we're more interested in this guy right here. The slope of this perpendicular line is going to be the negative reciprocal, which just means you flip this upside down and you make it a different sign. So instead of negative, it's positive, and I'm flipping it upside down so that it's 5/2 instead. So now I know the slope of this line is equal to 5/2. But in order to have an equation of a line, I need to not only have the slope, I need to also know what the y-intercept is. So what you could do is you could figure out the midpoint right here, because that's a point that works on this line and on this line. And then you could plug that in to solve for b. So if you want the midpoint, remember midpoint formula is just that you add up the x's of the endpoints, so -6 plus 4, and you divide by 2. And then you do the same thing with the y's. You add up 10 plus 16, and then it's just, or 10 plus 6, which is 16, and then that's just going to be halfway through. So then if we solve this, we know that this is -2 over +2, so then that's going to be -1, comma, and then this is going to be 16 over 2, which is 8. So now we know that a point that works on this line is going to be -1, comma 8. So we can plug that in for our x and a y, because our a point is just an x, comma y. So we know what an x is for this equation. We know what a y is for this equation. We know what the m is, the slope. So we can plug that all in to solve for what b is. So we would get 8 is equal to 5/2 times -1 for our x plus b. So then we're going to get we're going to multiply -1 times 5/2, and that's going to be -5/2. So then we have 8 is equal to -5/2 plus b. So then we're going to add 5/2 to each side. So we're going to have 8 plus 5/2 is equal to b, because it's going to cancel out on the right-hand side. Now 8 is the same thing as saying 16 over 2. So then when we add that up, we get 21 over 2 is equal to b. So now I know what b is, I know what m is, so I can plug it in to get an equation. So y is equal to 5/2 x plus what we got for b, which is 21 over 2. So then now what you might notice is that this doesn't look exactly like any of the answer choices up here. And that's because they manipulated the equation in a way which it looks like they just got rid of the denominators, which we can do by multiplying by the denominator, which is 2. So if we multiply the whole equation by 2, we could say that that's 2y is equal to 5x plus 21. So then that would be A. Okay, so now let's go to number 6. So number 6 says, assuming that x is not equal to 0, which of the following expressions is equivalent to this right here? So we would say that we're going to keep the common denominator because it's just subtracting fractions. So keep the common denominator, and we're going to subtract in between these. So we're going to say that 3x minus 11x is going to be negative 8x. And then we're going to say 1 minus negative 1. Remember, minus and minus is plus, so it's really 1 plus 1 is going to be 2. So now we have negative 8x plus 2 over 4. Let's see if they gave it to us in that version. No, they did not. They divided by a greatest common factor, So this would be, if we look at negative 8, 2, and 4, they're all divisible by 2. So we could divide everything by 2 to simplify it. And we could say that negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4, and then copy over the x, and then plus 2 divided by 2 is 1. And then 4x divided by 2 is going to be 2x. So then it would be letter choice J. How did you know to subtract them? Because there's a subtraction symbol in between. So this is just like 2 fractions. Just because there's variables doesn't mean it's not just a fraction. Like this is basically like 3/4 minus 1/4. Like it's just a fraction with the same number on the bottom. It's just that they add variables in. Okay, so let's go to number 7. For quadrilateral FG, shown below, FG and FJ are both equal to 7 root 2. So I'm going to write that, 7 root 2 over 2, So I'm going to write that right here. Thanks for liking and sharing the live. So then, can you explain what, after reading the questions, what the question leads you to solve it that way? So, like, this is just 2 fractions with a subtraction in between. So that's how I knew that I had to do subtracting fractions. Which means that I have to keep the like denominator and subtract the numerator. So then for this one, those are equal to 7 root 2 over 2. And then we have that angle F is a right angle, which is already labeled. GH is equal to 24 inches. And JH is equal to 25 inches. Which of the following is equal to sine of H? So this is angle H. We want to find out what sine of H is. Okay, so right away I see I have 2 triangles right here. So this is an isosceles right triangle, which means, remember, like the ones that that are isosceles or that have the same side length for 2 of the sides mean that like the angle opposite them have to be equal as well. So this angle has to be equal to that one. So, this I can just write as, well, I already used the 1 on there, so I'm going to write it as like 2 to show that these angles are equal. So, remember, a triangle adds up to 180 degrees, so if this is already 90 degrees, this would have to be 45 degrees, and this would have to be 45 degrees, because 45 plus 45 plus 90 is 180. So, we have a special right triangle here. We have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So now, knowing that, that helps us figure out what this side is over here. I mean, you could do Pythagorean theorem too if you wanted to, but that's just kind of unnecessary. So we know that the hypotenuse for this type of special right triangle is going to be equal to 7 root 2 over 2 times root 2. Because when you learned about special right triangles, this was x, this was x, this was x root 2 is how you labeled them. So like x, in this case, the side that this is 7 root 2 over 2, and we're going to be multiplying it by root 2 to get this side. This is just like a formula you memorize for special right triangles. So then when we multiply this all out, root 2 times root 2 cancels out the root. So then it would be times 2. 7 times 2 is 14. Divided by 2 is 7. So that means that this side right here is equal to 7. Now, what you might notice is you have one of your, what are they called, Pythagorean triples right here, 7, 24, 25. This is one of like the Pythagorean triples that you memorize, like the 3 side lengths that are always going to be like a right triangle. So we know that we have a right triangle over here. So if we want to, and the right angle is going to be in between like the legs right here. It's kind of hard to draw onto here, but it's like right there. So then we want to figure out what the sine of h is. So remember SOHCAHTOA, the so in SOHCAHTOA is sine. It says that sine is equal to, and this is kind of, this h is different than that one. I'm going to just say the sine is equal to opposite over the hypotenuse. So the opposite side, when we're referencing this angle, is going to be 7. And then the hypotenuse is going to be the longest side, or you can think of it as the one directly across from the right angle, is 25. So 7 over 25 is going to be the sine of h, so it's going to be b. Okay, so then let's go, let me get water really quick. Let's go to number 8. If x is not equal to 0 and y is not equal to 0, then the expression this is equivalent to which of these? Okay, so first I'm going to say negative 28 divided by 7 is negative 4. Then I'm going to match up my a's, which have like bases, so I can use the quotient rule, which says if I have like bases and I'm dividing in between, I can just subtract the powers and keep the like base. So I'm going to keep the a, and I'm going to subtract 3 minus 2, that gives me 1. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the b's. They are like bases. This technically has an exponent of 1. We just don't write it in math, as we're going to see at the end. So I'm going to subtract my exponents. 2 minus 1 is just 1. Now remember, we don't write those ones in math, so this would just look like this, negative 4ab. So it would be k. Let me just fix that really quick. Okay. So let's go to, this is for ACT math for people asking. So for number 9, it says the endpoints for a particular line segment are this and this. What is the length of the line segment? So we would just use the distance formula, which says that the distance is equal to the square root of our x's subtracted and squared plus our y's subtracted and squared. So then let's say that this is going to be, that this will be x2, y2, and that this will be x1, y1. So then what we're going to do is we're going to just plug those into our formula right here. And then we're going to say, okay, x2 is going to be 6, and we're subtracting x1, there it is, subtracting negative 10, and then squaring it. And then we're going to be adding it to y2 is going to be 8 minus whatever y1 is, which is 18, and then squaring that. And then we're just going to keep solving it. So we're going to say, okay, 6 minus a negative 10, that's just plus. So this becomes 16 squared plus 8 minus 18 is negative 10. Negative 10 squared is the same thing as positive 10 squared technically, but we'll just write it all out here. And then what we're going to do is we would do 16 squared plus negative 10 squared. So then that's going to be 356 under a square root. And IDK, how I'm understanding literally everything she's saying, and now I'm stuck here. I'm glad you're understanding it. Okay, so then we have to think, how can I simplify the square root? So I have to think, what are my factors for this? Well, 4 goes into this 89 times, so it would be 89 times 4 would multiply to get 356. 4 is a perfect square that I could take out, so I could say that this is equal to 2, because 2 times 2 is 4, so I could take out a 2. 2 root 89, so then that would be B. Okay, so let's go to this next one. All the first grade students at Fake Elementary School are in exactly one of 4 classes. The first class has 12 boys and 16 girls. The second class has 10 boys and 18 girls. The third class has 14 boys and 15 girls. And the fourth class has 13 boys and 12 girls. If one student is randomly selected to be the class representative, what is the probability that the selected student will be a girl? Okay, so we want to know the probability that they will be a girl. So we have to put, basically it's girls that we're interested in over boys plus girls, like everyone that we're talking about. So we're going to do all the girls added up. So 16 girls in the first class, plus there's going to be 18 girls in the next class. And then there's going to be 15 girls in the third class. And then there's going to be 12 girls in the fourth class. Over all of them added up, which I'm not going to write that all out. I'm just going to do it in my calculator, which is basically just adding all the boys and girls. So when you add all of that up, what you're going to get is 110 on the bottom, and then on the top you're going to get 61, so 61 over 110, and then that would be C. Okay, I'm glad you guys are liking the live. So then let's go to this next one right here. And let me just flip my notes to see if there's anything I want to say. Oh, this is, yeah. So I have a note that says that this little squiggly is a similarity, like it tells you that these are similar. Some people get this confused with the congruency symbol, which looks like this, but just remember this just means similar. So then what we're going to do is we're going to draw these triangles. It says when triangle LMN is similar to triangle XYZ, which of the following statements must be true? So let's draw these two triangles. Let's say we have triangle, they're not going to look exactly like this. We don't know. I'm just like ballparking it. So let's say LMN, and with similar triangles, they're named, like their names and letters correspond to each other. So like L corresponds to X, M must correspond to Y, N must correspond to Z. So like where L is, that's where X is, because they named it like that. Where M is, that's where Y is. So M is right there, so that means Y has to be here. Where N is, that's where Z is. So N is right here, so that means that Z has to be right here. So let me just move this. Okay. So then this says that which of these can be true if they're similar. So M has to be equal or congruent to Z. So M matches up with Y. So those are the ones that should be equal. So it's not that one. LM, this side right here, and XY have to be congruent or equal to each other. Well, LM matches up with XY. So yes, that is true. That's good. And this one says, that it's equal. Sorry, I was thinking that we're looking at congruent. Sorry. Take that back. They're not equal. They're just proportional because it's similar triangles. So it actually can't be that. And then let's see, for this one, LM over XY is equal to MN over YZ. So this is saying the proportional thing. So similar triangles, their corresponding sides are proportional. So LM is this side, and it corresponds to this side XY. So that's a good proportion. Right there, they match. MN is proportional to YZ. MN and YZ match. So then, yes, that's true. So I even like noted this at the beginning, like pay attention to this, because like the squigglies look the same as like congruency symbols kind of, but this is just saying similar. So they're not necessarily equal, but they are proportional. So it would be only number 3, which would be C. 26 is a passing score on the ACT. There's not necessarily really like a passing score. It's like some states use it as like a graduation requirement, and that it depends by state. Like usually I would say it's around like an 18-ish or like around the 20 mark for like those graduation requirements. So then let's go to number 12. It says, given that test scores for the state math exam are directly proportional to the amount of time spent studying, and for every 5 extra hours per week spent studying, a student's math score increases by 8 points. If a student wants his or her score to increase by 4 points, then how many extra hours per week should he or she study? Okay, so this is going to be, it says directly proportional, so we're setting up a direct proportion. So, the trick with these that I teach my students is just make sure your units on top and bottom match. So I'm going to say 5 extra hours, 5 hours per week is related to 8 points of an increased score, right? So then if I'm using the little trick of direct proportions, the units on top and bottom have to match, then that means that I have to have hours on top, points on the bottom. So it's saying if a student wants to increase their score by 4 points, so that's going to increase by 4 points, how many hours are related to that? So like the relationships are the same on each side and the units match on top and bottom. So we're solving for x hours. So we have to cross multiply. 8 times x is 8x. 5 times 4 is 20. So we have 8x is equal to 20, and then we just get x by itself by dividing by 8 on each side, so 20 over 8. And now it's not giving it in a, a fraction format. It's giving it in a decimal format, so you would just plug this into your calculator, and you would say, okay, what is 20 divided by 8? And that's going to be 2.5 G. Thank you guys for liking and sharing the live. So then let's go to number 13, and it says, a skincare company wants to demonstrate that their lotion reduces skin dryness better than regular moisturizer. Which of the following approaches would yield the best evidence? So A, give the lotion to volunteers and ask if they think their skin is less dry. So they're not, you have to be careful with like what the, what the goal is for what they're doing. So the goal is to see if their lotion reduces dryness better than a regular moisturizer. So like it's a comparison goal. They're not comparing it to anything here. So that's out. B, have volunteers apply the lotion on one arm and regular moisturizer on the other, then compare which arm has less dry skin. This would be going along with their goal of what they're wanting. They want to know if one's like more helpful than the other. So we can keep that. C says, ask volunteers to use the lotion for a month and report if they notice any improvement. Again, they want a comparison. This doesn't show any comparison to the other, the regular moisturizer. D says, split volunteers into 2 groups. One group uses the lotion, the other uses a placebo. Ask for feedback after a month. Again, they said, like, there's no comparison here. They're not saying, like, one group uses the lotion and one group uses the regular moisturizer. They're saying a placebo, so not that one. There's no comparison. So then let's go to E, send out free lotion samples and ask for feedback via email. Again, there's no comparison there, which is the whole point. So it would be B. So then for number 14, it says functions f and g are defined by this. Which of the following is equivalent to f of g of x? So what's inside the parentheses is representing your x for the specific function outside of the parentheses. So g of x is your x value for f of x. So I'm saying that this whole thing, x plus 2, is what's going to replace x in each instance here of my function f of x. So instead of writing x, I have to write x plus 2 everywhere that I see an x there. So instead of x squared, I have x plus 2 squared, which is the same thing as x plus 2 times x plus 2. And then I just have to copy down plus 9 times x plus 2. So now I have to do, okay, what is, I'm going to actually write it closer over here so I don't run out of room. What is x plus 2 times x plus 2? This is 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses times 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses. So we have to FOIL, which is an acronym that stands for what you need to be multiplying. Oh, this is really bothering me. Okay. One second. Okay. So F stands for we have to multiply the first things together, x times x, so that's x squared. And then O stands for I have to multiply the outside things, so 2 times x is 2x. I stands for I have to multiply the inside things, so 2 times x, again, on the inside though. And then L stands for I have to multiply the last thing, so 2 times 2, which is just going to be 4. Now I have to do distributive property. I have to distribute or multiply the 9 times each of these terms in parentheses, so that's going to be plus 9x plus 18. And then we're going to now combine our like terms. So I see I have like terms here. I have 2x, 2x, and 9x. 2x plus 2x is 4x, plus 9x is 13x. So then I have x squared plus 13x. And I also have like terms here of just regular numbers and regular numbers, 4 and 18. So 4 plus 18 is going to be 22. So then that would be our answer, and that's H. Okay, and this is going to be the last problem. So, bonus question, test your algebra skills. Okay, yeah, I basically, like, even though this is an ACT book, I put, like, these periodically to just practice because I've had students where their calculators die on test day, so I think it's always good for people to just practice not using a calculator sometimes. So we're going to be doing this problem when f of x is equal to all this. What is the value of f of 1? Or absolute value of f of 1, I mean. So we're trying to find the absolute value of f of 1. And that's supposed to be an absolute value bar. Okay, so that's going to be equal to the absolute value of all of this when I plug in 1 where x is, because the 1 is replacing the x, is what it says. So the absolute value of negative 3 times 1 is replacing the x, so 1 squared, minus 2 times 1 is replacing that x, plus 2, all in absolute value bars. So then I have to do, okay, I do 1 squared is just 1. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3, so I have negative 3. Negative 2 times 1 is just negative 2, so minus 2, plus 2. Now I have to combine everything inside the absolute value bar, so negative 3 minus 2 plus 2 is just going to be absolute value of negative 3. Now absolute value just means that you make whatever is inside, the negative 3 in this case, positive if it's not already. So this is just going to be equal to 3. So that is your answer.